Hey guys, welcome back for another episode. Today, Tim and I are talking about a little bit of processing workflow, some of the things we go through after the shoot, just to kind of get an idea to the potential clients out there why it takes
You're right.
the amount of time it takes to get your photos back. You know, this
Yeah.
isn't like dropping off your film at the Walmart and coming back an hour later and picking it up.
Right.
There's a lot of things that go into making the prints look, professional, and what you were trying to get when you hired the photographer.
And this is true with videography and photography. So,
Right. Yep.
but we're going to probably cover mainly photography today. So,
Yes.
all right. So,
So it's episode 7 of The Couch. All right, so Tim, go ahead and you've got a couple shots here that we're just going to kind of do some preliminary editing to.
yeah.
So, but the first thing we want to point out is, you know, when you go to an event, when the photographer shows up at your event, he, for example, may shoot 1,000 shots, and you may get 300-400 of those shots.
Right.
Because what happens is, you know, in groups of people, we're taking 2 and 3 shots because you've always got that one guy who can't seem to keep his eyes open.
That's right.
When the shutter goes off, you know, you could do the countdown and all that, and it still doesn't help. There's still, and we're talking about adults.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always that one guy or girl with their eyes closed. So that's why you'll have maybe 3 shots of every group. Plus, there's other things that happen. You're outside and a bee flies in, and you know the
Yeah.
girls run off. You know, whatever it is. So there's always going to be that. So I think it's important to point out the first step once the photographer comes back to his studio and he's going through the prints is you have to go through and eliminate all that garbage.
Yeah.
And if you've got 1,000 prints to go through,
That takes some time.
that's a lot of time because you've got to look at those groups and you've got to say, okay, now which one of these, you know, is perfect. Because
Right.
you want to make sure you're keeping the one where everybody's eyes are open, everybody's looking at the camera, all the flash synced and fired at the same time. So you've
Right.
got to go through all 1,000 shots, and that can take a couple hours
Oh, yeah,
to go
easily.
through
Easily.
right off the bat, just to eliminate the stuff you're not going to work with.
Right.
And that's before you touch any of the editing tools.
And if you're like me, you have a really hard time picking
Right.
between. You know, there's probably like 2 or 3 that are very similar,
Yeah.
and you go, I really like this one. I like this one. I like this one. I got to make a choice here because I can't do this with all these shots.
And I think that's one of the most important things too, to remember as a photographer. You only need one shot of that group.
Right.
The customer's not going to care that they have 3 almost identical
Yeah.
shots. You have to get rid of those.
Yeah,
And
you just gotta pick
that's
one.
part of it is
Yeah.
picking out which one out of that 3 you're going to keep.
Yeah. It takes a long time.
Okay, so let's say we've gone through, and I like to go through probably 2 or 3 times the deletion process because there's
Yeah.
some in there. You know, I might have a set of 3 photos, but even out of that 3, I finally decide, you know what, this shot just didn't work.
Yeah.
I didn't need this at all.
Yeah.
So I'll go through a couple times and kind of clear that out.
Yeah.
So what is your workflow after you've gone through and you've got the set that you're actually going to work
Well,
on?
if I'm in Lightroom, what I usually do in order to pick those out, you can actually flag the shots.
Right.
So you can go in and say, well, I like this one. Hit P on the keyboard. That's basically pick, and it flags it as a pick. And you go through, just pick a few. We'll just do this as an example here. All right. I like this one.
Now, see, what I like to do the opposite. I'll go
Yeah.
through, and you can use actually a shortcut key of X for, they're still flagged, but they're flagged for deletion.
Okay.
So I'll go through and I'll flag the bad ones
Okay.
to get rid of.
So I guess, yeah, however you like to do it, this is how I do it. I'll flag them. Then I go over here to filter, and I'll say, just show the flagged ones. And that way it just shows the ones that I want to work with.
Okay,
Eliminates the other ones. I don't know which way is better. That don't think it really matters.
No.
Just personal preference. So, yeah, so once you've gotten those sort of, picked out, you've got your best shots, your next step is processing. And this is where it can take, it can take a long time. You're
Right.
talking about if you're doing, retouching, if you're doing, changing the lighting, maybe you're doing some rubber stamping, maybe you're doing some, there's all kinds of things that go on in that.
Right. Well,
So,
one of the steps I know my workflow is I'll go through, and the first thing I want to do, and this is going to be information that you pick up from the client, is what sizes are these going to be printed at? Because these are an original aspect ratio that came right out of the camera, right off the sensor.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is you're going to have to come in here and crop these, and that's another thing to keep in mind when you're shooting. You need to leave a little bit of extra room.
Yeah.
If you're shooting, especially if you're shooting for 8x10s, that's the biggest one that'll get you.
Yeah.
It cuts down on the width of your photograph big time. And if you don't have enough space in there, there is absolutely nothing you can do. You will not be printing an 8x10. You're going to be in trouble. So
Yeah.
I like to go through and maybe crop all of mine into
Okay.
the dimensions they want. But I want to point out, we're working in Lightroom now.
Yeah.
And again, in my workflow process, I'll do the cropping, then I'll go through and I'll do maybe some color correction, some temperature correction, and exposure correction. But then after all that's done, and we're talking about hours of work just in that, 400 photos or whatever it is, then you've got to export a pretty large select group of these to Photoshop because you've got things like maybe a twig
Yeah.
sticking in the scene that you
You gotta
didn't see
start-
before
Yeah.
that you've got to take out. Now you've got to start doing clone stamping, and you've got to start getting, maybe the person had a fuzzball in their jacket,
Yeah.
and it's just something you can't see when you look through that viewfinder. These are all the little details that are going to make you stand apart from a guy with another SLR.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like I said, we're just trying to get across the point of how long these photos actually take to process, and why it may take you a month before you get your wedding photos back, or longer, because we're talking about a small wedding with, say, for example, maybe you end up with 400 photos. So it may take you a month. But, if you've got some of these larger weddings where you have an assistant with you, or there's 2 or 3 people shooting, well, now you triple that time. I mean, it is very possible for it to take 3 months before you get your wedding photos back.
Yeah. It's a lot of work.
And then on top of that, after all of this processing's done, they have to be printed and ordered and sent to you, and a DVD has to be made.
All that stuff,
and all that stuff. And it's just, I know it's hard to wrap your mind around it because, like I said, when you used to take your old disposable camera to Walmart, or if you took your film, it was an hour. Or you can take your thumb drive in now, and it's instant almost.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
Right.
That's why you hire a photographer, so that you get this type of quality out of your work.
Taking the shots is just the first step. I mean, you got to get back and do all these other things that are behind the scenes. Nobody sees these things, but that's how you get these amazing, wedding pictures.
Exactly, and that's the other thing to point out too. When you're looking at prices of photographers, if you have a friend or a relative or something that says, "Oh, I'll do your photos for $100 or whatever," or you slide me some gas money or whatever it is. They're not taking into account all the hours that need to be put in after the pictures are taken. They're not going to be processing them. They're not going to be printing them for you. They're not going to be cropping them and making sure they're the correct size. And they may not even know about that.
They might not.
They may take their thumb drive to Walmart, plug it in, and just let it go. And you're not... These events that you hire a photographer for are usually such special events. That's why you're spending the money. That's why you have a photographer there, not just people with their point and shoot. You don't want to end up with photos that look like they were just taken with a point and shoot.
Right.
These are especially, things like your wedding and the reception and things like that.
Yeah, it's important.
Baby photos, I know, are a big thing now. Those things only happen once.
Exactly.
And if you hire your cousin or your friend or whatever it is for $100 to come shoot photos, you may end up with nothing from that.
You might just get what you paid for.
That's exactly right. You get what you paid for. So if you pay for $100 photos, you get $100 worth of photos.
Exactly.
If you pay for $1,500 worth of photos, hopefully...
hopefully things go...
Hopefully that's what you get.
Yeah.
And it's always good to check online. Check reviews on people. I mean, there's a plethora of information out there about photographers and the way they work, how they work with the client. And that's another thing, having a good relationship with your photographer while he's at your event.
Keeping you relaxed and
exactly,
not really worrying about these things.
Making sure he's fully aware of what you're going for in these shots and what you're trying to get out of them.
Absolutely.
Is a big part. So these are all just different things to look at when you are hiring a photographer, and things to keep in mind. they're not lazy and they're not just holding on to your prints
Right.
for a month or 2 or
Yeah.
3. They have a lot of work to
It's a
do.
lot of
And
work.
remember, on top of that, if they are a reputable photographer, they're probably busy too. So they are not doing just your wedding and then coming back and working on your photos. They're doing your wedding, and then maybe the next day they have, a family reunion to shoot,
Yeah.
or baby photos, or another wedding,
wedding, yeah.
and the next weekend the same thing. So it just keeps going and going. So be patient. Now that's not to say there aren't some photographers out there who aren't just lazy and
Right.
don't get around to it.
Sure.
But they do have a huge task. They have a lot of things to do.
Yeah.
And again, not just your job, but every day more photos come in and more photos come in. So
Well, let's show them a little bit about, if you take a shot, like we have a shot here, just
right.
somebody on the job, this is out right off the camera.
Mm-hmm.
This is what it looked like. And, there's some things we could do to this that could make it better. There's blemishes, we could do some contrast adjustments, and we can just kind of start playing with this.
Right.
There's some contrast in there. Let's see what happens there. And you probably want to crop this out a little bit. Maybe change some of these, the cropping of it. This a little bit. And then Lightroom will do some blemish, repairs, but we may want to go to Photoshop for more of these. But there's some stuff in here to do some removal of these type of things.
Right.
This is just this is one picture we're messing with here, just to give you an idea of imagine there's 400 of these.
Yeah, exactly. Well, to start, you have 1,000.
Yeah.
And you've got to go through and eliminate and get down to that good set of 400.
Right. I'm just doing some minor adjustments here. Maybe when you go into Photoshop, when you go in and let's see, edit in Photoshop. All right, so now we're in Photoshop. Maybe we want to do more, more retouching. Let's get this layer. The healing brush. Grab an area here. Touch these areas up. I mean, it's,
And that's just clearing up the blemishes on a couple of the blemishes on his face. Then you've got skin texture to take care of.
right?
You've got, his eyes in this happen to be a little bit dark, maybe because of the hat or the glasses.
Yeah.
You gotta lighten
Lighten
up
those
the
up.
eyes a little bit, bring that out. Maybe take care of some shadows that probably shouldn't be in there.
Yeah.
Sharpen it up a little bit. There are just a ton of things that could be done with these photographs. I know some people are getting into the filters thing now.
Yeah.
They get that vintage feel to the photographs. Setting the white, black, and gray points on these. This all takes an extremely long amount of time.
Here's an example. Here's a shot we took of this guy. That's right off the camera. Now, when we were done processing it, it looks like this.
Exactly.
You can see a huge difference.
And you can spend an hour processing one photo like that
Yeah.
to get that final touch.
This took easily an hour to do.
Exactly.
Just one picture.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps up what we wanted to say. It was more like a discussion today, I know, and this is more on the side for the consumer than
Yeah.
anyone else, just to give them a really tiny look into what it takes when you're hiring a photographer, why it's taking him so long, and why he's charging you so much
Right.
to do the job he's doing.
All the steps that go into all these things that you want to have happening.
That's right.
There's a lot involved.
So we hope this helps. If you guys have any questions or like any more information about some of the things that go into doing a photo shoot, leave us a message in the comments below. And thanks for watching.
Yep. Thanks for watching.